everyone, and welcome to this presentation on justice and social welfare. This is now part 10 for week 3, same old citation of the chapter that we are covering. Okay, here we go. Clark and Higgins. We'll add Winfrey later. So their idea was about regulated capitalism. So what does this mean? Regulations are corrections to the market that are designed to counter the laissez-faire tendency favoring cumulative inequality. So when we use the word correction, then that means that it's fixing something that is wrong or broken. And in this case, it's the unregulated capitalism that leads to accumulation of wealth for some and disadvantage for others in terms of inequality. Okay, so they're not against capitalism per se. In fact, they value economic competition. The issue is the unregulation. Is that a word? Unregulation? Yeah. Okay. The laissez-faire type of capitalism. That's what they have issue with. Okay, so what would this look like in terms of the ideal version of capitalism? So I'm going to illustrate the fish story that's in the chapter and hopefully kind of bring some clarity to it. So bear with me. It's hopefully all will make sense at the end. Okay. So here we have two fishermen, and when they're fishing by themselves, they catch the same amount of fish. And then one day, one of the fishermen says, hey, I'm going to build a boat, a canoe in this case, so that I can go out into the water and catch more fish. So she ends up catching twice as much as the other person. So the other fisherman is like, this is not good for me. So he asks her, can I borrow your boat and I'll promise to give you 1 out of 4 or a quarter of my catch? So of course she's going to say yes. So that's what he does. And then he ends up catching 4 fish, but he gives 1 of them to her. So she's feeling pretty good at this point because she didn't do anything, and yet here she has a fish. So then another person comes along and sees what's happening, and this fisherman is also thinking, hey, can I do the same thing? Can I borrow your boat and I'll give you a quarter of my catch? And of course she says yes again. So now when he catches 4 fish, he gives 1 to her. So not only is she getting a fish from the first fisherman, but now from the second fisherman, all without doing anything. So other people start seeing how many fish are being caught on the boat, and they start to build boats. So then all these people can catch 4 fish, and they don't have to give the original boat owner any of their fish. This then leads to competition among the boats to catch the most fish. And then after a while, everybody's catching a lot of fish. And this can then help decrease prices for the consumer. So it's kind of the competition is what's leading to benefits for the consumer. But what about these original owners of the boats, right? The ones who aren't doing anything, they own property, they don't have the capital in the form of the boat, and they're making money off of that initial investment in terms of the capital. So what can happen? Well, they might start saying, hey, I want half of your catch. If you want to use my boat, then I need half, not a quarter. So this can then lead to the accumulation of wealth, the disproportionate accumulation of wealth, et cetera, that Clark and Higgins are against. In the ideal sense, without the accumulation of wealth at the top, then capitalism is working well. So how do we get the ideal sort of capitalism? So what are these corrective measures? There's a listing of them. They're in the book, but I'm just going to read them here anyways. So effective trust legislation to prevent the growth of corporate monopolies or oligopolies. Their tariff legislation, opening markets to cheaper goods. Corrective taxes and subsidies. Conservation of natural resources. Shortening the workday and providing better pay as improvement occurs in methods of production, the workers should be benefiting from those results. Compensatory and preventative protection for dangerous and injurious occupations, emergency employment during periods of recession and depression, the principle of eminent domain, in this case being used to shift polluting businesses out of residential area, and the weakening of the divide separating capital from labor by facilitating access of workers to stock ownership. So all of these basically were efforts that Theodore Roosevelt and later Franklin Delano Roosevelt tried to implement and were successful in many regards in implementing in order to regulate capitalism to benefit the workers. So now let's add Winfrey to this conversation. And what he brought in was the idea of public goods in a mixed economy. So what do we mean by public goods? Well, there are two characteristics of what makes a public good. One is that it's non-excludable, which means it would be very difficult in terms of it will cost a lot, or it's nearly impossible to exclude someone else from using it. And then it's non-rivalrous, which means that just because one person uses it doesn't mean another person can't use it, and they're not prevented from using it. So if you think of a public park, for example, that would be a public good. Other examples include roads, libraries, police services, bridges, etc. What Winfrey is then saying is that we need to expand what is considered a public good. And expand it how? Well, by considering welfare a public good, because it is in the common interest of everyone in the community and can be used by anyone. As such, it should not be subjected to cost-benefit analysis in terms of money, but rather cost-effectiveness in terms of benefiting the individual and the public. And yes, I see that there's a parentheses there that should not be there. Okay, moving on. Public goods in a mixed economy. What does he mean by a mixed economy? Well, he's not the first person to come up with it, but let's go over what a mixed economy is. It's a combination of three types of economies: market, command, and traditional. So this information that I'm presenting comes from an article in the Balance, balance.com, and I've given you the citation here to describe more succinctly than I could what these types of economies are. So let's start with the market economy. This is basically what we have in this country. The laws of supply and demand direct the production of goods and services. So businesses sell their wares at the highest price that consumers will pay, and then consumers or shoppers will look for the lowest prices. The workers bid their services at the highest wages that their skills allow, and then employers seek to get the best employees at the lowest price. So you can see here that it's a balance game. Okay, so command economy. This is where a central government makes all economic decisions. The government or collective owns the land and the means of production. So essentially communistic type governments and the economies that exist within those governments and those societies. And then you have traditional economies which rely on customs, history, and time-honored beliefs. Tradition guides economic decisions such as production and distribution. Traditional economies depend on agriculture, fishing, hunting, gathering, or some combination of the above. And then they also use barter instead of money. So we'll typically find traditional economies in developing nations. So what would a mixture of these look like? Again, this is from that article in the Balance. I think this is a great cartoon or comic or whatever you want to call it, illustration. It's an illustration of the characters of a mixed economy. So you have the market economy on one side, maybe a command economy on the other. Market economy, private property, supply and demand lead to the prices being set, and it's driven by self-interest. Command economy, the federal government can safeguard people and markets. The government may own some key industries, and the government can manage social welfare programs. So you combine those, and now you have federal government that can safeguard people and markets, and a government has a large role in military, international trade, and transportation. So we put them all together, and what does a just society look like? Well, it's heavily regulated capitalism, including that long list on the previous slide that I won't put back up, and with the addition of expanding what are considered public goods. So we would have universal programs in terms of healthcare, education, childcare, social security, etc. And I think that's the end, yes, of part 10. Next up, we have part 11. Just kidding. This really is the end of week 3. We have achieved what we wanted to achieve, and now we are done and can move on. Thank you for watching once again, and bye.